Oh my gosh, it's my first real video. Welcome, it's absolutely lovely to have you here. And I hope you enjoyed today's speed paint of my two characters, Red and Navy. I'll dive a little deeper into the lore later, but to give you a bit of a rundown, I spent the last 10 months working on a short film with my teammates Pulsar and Risk. With that 10 months of making the short film, I drew these characters way too much, so they really mean a lot to me. Oh, it just started raining on me. Let's get out of this rain and get to sketching. Off to the art table! Alright, we're gonna start right off here with a speedy paint of Red. Red is a character that I have not drawn in about a month, so you can see here I was kind of struggling. I was redrawing a few things over and over again, and I just want to talk through this process here because I made a few fundamental art mistakes that later on I go back to fix. But basically what you're supposed to do during figure drawing is don't go straight into the details. That's a big no-no. Don't do it. Instead, what you want to do is break down the shapes, do a gesture, break it down into simple shapes, simple straight source curves, all that good stuff. Now, you can see here, I did not do that. I went straight into the details like you're not supposed to do. And it just made the posing feel a little bit stiff. And I wasn't really happy with the proportions or the feeling of it. Usually when I don't draw for a while like this, I do get very stiff in my drawings like this, and I like to go back, redraw it over and over again until I'm nice and loosey-goosey with it, and I can get back into that gestural flow that gives most sketches their life and their energy. So after having a hard time with the initial steps, I went back over the sketch, and I kind of just went over the basic shapes again. I got a more defined shape of the trapezius muscles, how they connect from the neck to the shoulders, just because in the last one I felt like it was a little bit not really close to human anatomy. You can see as I zoom in here, the shape that I'm using on the arm is actually a shape that I learned a long time ago from Ethan Becker. Great YouTuber, great learning resource. I don't think I would have gotten into art school if it wasn't for his videos, I'm not gonna lie. The shape that I'm using here, he calls the favored triangle. It can be used for anything from limbs to dynamic posing, but here, since it's a simple pose meant for reference for Artfight, I'm just using it for the arms, the forearms, and the legs. Which, I'll pop that up on screen here right now if you want to go check out his video on that. It's a lot more in-depth, and he actually does drawovers of different artists on the internet. I really tried to get better proportions and just better shapes in general, and just kind of go over the fundamentals again, since I haven't been drawing in a while. The last change that I made was the expression. The initial expression was fine in my opinion, but I just wasn't really feeling the nuance of it. He's this character that feels worried and anxious about his experiments not working and not saving their lives, and I really wanted to convey that depth and that tiredness, that that Ryland Grace energy, if you will. So just going back to your initial expression and changing a little bit in the eyebrow position or putting a little eye bag in there, that can go a long way. I checked the before and after. I'm way happier with this version, and a lot looser in my sketches, so hopefully Navy sketch goes a little bit smoother. Let me explain a little bit about the lore as this time-lapse is going on, because I love these characters so much. So the synopsis of the film is that these two astronauts, Red and Navy, are stuck at the edge of the solar system while they watch the Earth die. They don't know if there's any survivors, they don't know if anybody else escaped, and they don't know if anybody's coming for them. They have a limited food supply and nobody to turn to in these crazy circumstances but each other. Red is an anxious little scientist, but damn is he stubborn. For so long, he clings to this idea that there's others, that living just a little bit longer can save them, can bring back some sense of normalcy, and maybe life can go back to what it once was. Navy, on the other hand, is my bread and butter, personally. He's quieter in his grief, and maybe doesn't always know how to express his emotions in the best way. I was very inspired by characters like Aizawa from My Hero Academia, and, believe it or not, Craig from South Park. These characters who have very flat affects, but aren't emotionless. They have emotions, and they feel grief. Sometimes it just doesn't look the same. While I always related a little bit more to Navy during the creation of this, Red was based off of people in my life who I absolutely adore and love, who do show their emotions very clearly and very loudly, and that's okay too. Now, I'm not gonna spoil all of it, obviously. I do hope to release this short film someday after it's out of festivals and stuff. But it is a story that I hold near and dear to my heart, and one that's full of romance, human connection, and two silly little goobers trying to make the most of the time that they have left together, while also crying their eyes out because everything died. You know, that too. But yeah, they got that classic sunshine and depressed cat energy. So if you like that dynamic, you know, the tweaking Craigs, the Aizawa and present Mikes, then these are the guys for you. Finally, now that the sketches are done, we can go right into the line art, and we're just gonna do a time lapse because I don't really have much to say about the line art itself. If you want to know what brushes I used in Photoshop, I just used the Kyle's Ultimate Inker brush, the one that comes default with Photoshop, because I just moved back home and I'm back on my old computer, so I don't have any of my nice fancy Photoshop brushes. That aside, let's jump right into the line art time lapse. Ah, isn't that a lot better? Don't you just love a good line art? I like how this turned out. It wasn't too rough, it wasn't too stiff either, and I think it's ready for a good color. Thankfully, the colors for these guys were figured out months ago, so coloring and choosing all that was not really that much of an issue. So I kind of just approached this like a coloring book, put some YouTube on the background, and just chilled. I like to fill my characters with some kind of bright color, like I used teal here, which was probably not the best idea, but I usually do it with like bright green or something, just to make sure that I don't miss any of those like little white gaps and stuff. It always annoys me going back and seeing like, oh, I missed like one tiny little white gap, why? If you're doing this with a character where you haven't figured out the colors yet, get together a color palette and then change the background a little bit. So have a white background, have some neutral toned backgrounds, have a black background, and just play around with that so that you can see what the color palette of your character looks like with multiple different backgrounds. That'll really highlight any issues you have in having way too many similar values or looking like your color palette is a little bit like rainbow vomit. As for color theory and all that stuff, I do know like the fundamentals of color theory and all that, and I can do a video on that maybe in the future, but that's one of the things that I'm really hoping to delve a little bit deeper into. With this film, I wanted to get better with using color to tell a story, and I had this whole idea of, at the beginning of the story, when they're trapped in this ship and everything's kind of depressing, the paint is dull and lifeless and kind of like gross and muddy and all that. And then as the film progresses, it gets more vibrant, it gets more bright and colorful, and I did get to do a little bit of that, but I didn't know enough about painting and coloring to really bring out the colors and really bring out the lighting. So on this YouTube channel, one of the things that I will be focusing on, hopefully, is color, mainly with digital painting, because I actually don't really do a lot of digital painting, and I'm hoping to do a little bit more of it. I think it's really cool, and I like the visual style of it. And there you have it, the finished art profiles of Red and Navy. I made the borders a little bit more nice and added a little bit of Artfight info. But yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with how these turned out. I think the proportions are a little bit off, but I don't mind that too much since most people on Artfight tend to make it in their own style anyways, and it gets their general character design and proportioning to each other across. But yeah, that's going to be it for today, folks. Thank you so much if you stuck around this long, and if you have, consider subscribing, and leave a comment about what you liked, didn't like, or what you want to see in the future. See you next time.